Alright everybody, how we doing today? Time to cover news in the Middle East. So, top common eye aide says no talks to the U.S. under any circumstances. This is more, I guess this would more be seen as Near East. Excuse me, by the way. Again, from Reuters. The top military advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said on Wednesday that Tehran would not negotiate with the United States under any circumstances, an apparent hardening of its position as the Gulf tanker crisis escalates. Indeed, and if you're not familiar, they supposedly took some tankers belonging to the British because they turned towards their shore and made landfall. Or so they claim, and therefore they had the right. Britain calls it piracy. They disagree. They shot down our drone. We shot down their drone. It's all sorts of insane saber rattling happening all over the place. It's ridiculous. The Swedish operator of a British flagged oil tanker seized by Iran in the Gulf last week said it had been able to speak to crew members, and all 23 of them were safe. We had direct contact with the crew on board the vessel last night by telephone, and they're all okay and in good health. And they're getting good cooperation with the Iranians on board, Stena Bulk spokesman Pat Adamson said. The company said it had no evidence that the ship had been involved in a collision, one of the reasons Iran was cited for sending commandos to capture it last Friday. The tough remarks by Khamenei's aide, Hussein Dagan, a senior commander of Iran's elite revolutionary guards, whose views are seen as reflecting those of Khamenei, appeared to take a firm line in response to Western proposals to beef up security in the Strait of Hormuz in the wake of the seizure of the ship. Dagan said Iran would take action if the status of the strait were altered, and that no country would be allowed to ship oil through it unless all countries can. His remarks were reported by Al Jazeera television, which did not supply direct quotes of an interview with him. He singled out the United Arab Emirates for criticism, saying it had become a base for attacks on Iran, and repeated earlier Iranian threats to attack all U.S. targets in the Iranian region in the event of war. Now look, the Strait of Hormuz, I believe, is contested territory between the UAE and Iran. Honestly, though, I think it would be in everyone's best interest if they just allowed ships to pass through unharmed, so long as they didn't get too close to national territory. Meaning, establishing territory at the shoreline. I think that would be the best agreement to avoid volatile situations like this. To make the Strait of Hormuz neutral territory belonging to no one. That, I think, would be best. But negotiating that, you'd probably have a hard time. Probably wouldn't even be doable. But that's what would be in the best interest, I think. But probably not possible. You'd have to compromise something. In fact, I think the current situation is something of a compromise, really. Anyway, Dagon's remarks appear to shift the Iranian position on talks with the United States. In the past, Tehran has said talks are possible, although Washington must lift all sanctions first and return to the nuclear deal it abandoned last year. We should get back into that nuclear deal. I'm not kidding. We shouldn't have hopped out of probably one of the truly good things Obama did in the midst of all the crap. The Trump administration says the purpose of its sanctions is to force Iran to the negotiating table, and it is open to talks, but Iran must make the first move. Earlier on Wednesday, Iran's pragmatist president Hassan Rouhani, who has drawn fire from hardline clerical leaders for reaching the nuclear pact of world powers 2015, said Iran was ready for just negotiations, but not if they mean surrender. Britain has called for a European-led naval mission to ensure safe shipping through the world's most important oil artery, after Iran seized the Stena Impero last week. The United States is trying to rally support for a global coalition to secure Gulf waters, although allies have been reluctant to join a U.S.-led mission for fear of escalating confrontation. France, Italy, and Denmark gave initial support to the British plan. A German foreign minister spokesman said Berlin was talking to Britain and France about the idea. The Trump administration abandoned the Trump administration. I said Tramp. Yeah, the Trump administration abandoned the nuclear deal last year, arguing that it was too weak because it did not cover non-nuclear issues such as Iran's missile program and its regional behavior, Dagon repeated Iranian assertions that its missile program is non-negotiable. Well, which one is it? Is it non-negotiable or non-existent? Because I've heard in the past they claim that there was no missile program, now they're admitting there is. Kind of hard to trust you when you kind of flip-flop there, Iran. Kind of hard to trust you guys. I don't think either side of this has really conducted themselves either honorably or ethically. And half the European countries involved have been absolute pussies. I'm not kidding. They've been about as effectual as taking off your shoe and throwing it at them. Like, what's that gonna do? All the EU itself has had to offer is words, just pretty words that amount to nothing, which would be so typical of their class of politician. Lots of pretty words and no results at all. Go figure. But to be fair to Iran, they have been fucked with a lot over the years, and they have put up with so much that their attitude is understandable. However, I will say they have done some things that are pretty inexcusable, like their comments towards Jews and the state of Israel, their very racist attitude. The fact that they have, been acting the way they have over the Strait of Hormuz, which should be regarded as neutral territory, but they certainly haven't treated it as such. They treat it like it's their own personal backyard, and they get to say who can and can't get through it. That's how they've been acting in this situation. Some of their claims I find highly dubious. Why would those British ships just turn off their trackers and suddenly turn toward their shore? Makes no sense. I don't buy it. And there's still some remaining mysteries in the current Iranian situation. Who shot the rockets off in the Baghdad Green Zone? We never clearly identified. Who actually destroyed those oil tankers owned by the Japanese? You could say it was Iran, but I'm not sure. I think it was probably some sort of splinter group or radical faction within the IRC, or Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The IRCG, or whatever it's called. Can't get my acronym straight today. Probably some splinter group, and I imagine they might have even been responsible for the rockets in the Baghdad Green Zone. They might not even know the splinter group exists. That's just my current theory at the moment. Either way, there's no clear evidence that Iran has done anything worthy of an act of war. We dodged a bullet. We've dodged a couple bullets. So Trump is pretty anti-war, but not anti-sanction or anti-tariff enough. Bottom line is, this whole situation is just complete bullshit, complete nonsense. These politicians are children. And they're ill-behaved children at that. Anyway,